Hello, everyone. I'm Joshua Nugent, and this is another episode of A Better You podcast. In today's episode, I am going to be discussing spiritual experiences through meditation versus drugs. For a while now, I've been thinking about what I'm going to put into this episode. I've had this idea in my mind for the past few weeks, and I wasn't really sure if I should jump into this topic mainly because of the drug aspect, and this is in no way, shape, or form me promoting drug use in any way. This is a sobriety podcast, after all. But this is just to recall my experiences through drugs and comparing them with my experiences through meditation, and how both the experiences, what they mean to me, and maybe in a way I can have people relate to this. Hopefully that's the goal. So when I talk about spiritual experiences, what do I mean? So I guess in a way, I should give a little background into what I have in terms of spirituality. So for those of you who don't know, I grew up Catholic, Roman Catholic. I was born and raised. And, excuse me. I was a Roman Catholic for about 16, 17 years. At one point in my life, I wanted to become a priest. I went to these monthly retreats in St. Joseph Seminary. And basically with these retreats, it was just you spend a weekend in this facility that trains young men who are wanting to become Catholic priests. So I hung around a lot of people that were into the faith, that were wanting to become priests. I did this program for about 4 years. Huge shout out to Father Sweeney and Father Mizzagilli. These two men really pushed me to be a better person during that time, and I thank them for the wisdom that they shared, although at the time I didn't really understand it. But now, as a 26-year-old man, I see what they were trying to do, and just trying to guide me to be a better person, not necessarily to commit to priesthood right away. So I really do have nothing but fond memories about them. They were great men, and but anyways, so I had that going for me for a little while, for, like I said, around 16, 17 years. Once I stopped going into the program, I started to really question the faith. I was beginning to have my doubts about, what is the meaning of heaven and hell? Why do certain people go to hell? I'm trying to remember this book that I read in high school that really got me questioning everything. And I could be wrong about the title, but I believe it's called Inherit the Wind. It's basically it's a play about these two lawyers that take on a case where this teacher was teaching evolution in a school, and this was like in the 1940s or 50s, and it was like illegal. It was in the South, and it was illegal at the time. So there were a lot of philosophical questions, ideology being questioned throughout the story, and it's a very interesting book. I recommend it. And that was kind of like my first real exposure to questioning my faith. And then eventually I stumbled upon George Carlin. And for those of you who don't know who George Carlin is, not for the faint of heart, but another one that's really strong against questioning religion as a whole and as an idea. So these were things that were influencing me away, and then eventually, I would say about a few years later, I was influenced by some friends to try out Buddhism. And Buddhism at the time, I didn't really understand it. I didn't understand what it was, what it did for people. I didn't really understand it as a whole. But I understood that a lot of it had to do with consciousness and awareness. So naturally, I clinged to that. And then I started understanding that a lot of it comes with meditation and enlightenment. And these ideas were presented to me. And they seemed enticing. They seemed very up my alley. But unfortunately, at the time when I stumbled upon these ideas, I was very, and still am to this day, but the difference being I just have a little awareness of it. Very egotistical when I practice meditation and talking about awareness and all this stuff. I didn't have a real grasp of it. And it was it seemed like fun in the beginning. It seemed like, I found something that could fulfill me. But in reality, I was just trying to replace the hole that the Catholic faith left, with not following that, not thinking that the faith was valid and the teaching, and excluding all the teachings. I thought it was all bad. And which is just not true. Absolutely not true. And eventually, I practiced this, went through rehab and rediscovered Dharma recovery, and kind of got a real idea of what it means to practice meditation, understanding a little more about Buddhism, talking to people within the community, and having a better understanding of what the practice means. So I've had some foundation of spirituality. Whether I recognized it at the time or not, it was there. It was building. And for people who have no foundation, they just have no how do I even start that? How do I even build a foundation? And I always tell people, just always remain curious about what it is that you're trying to, what it is that you're trying to understand. Spirituality is not something that you try to understand intellectually. It's something that you have to feel. It's something that you have to understand with your heart, not with your mind. And that's a very difficult thing for a lot of people to do, is understanding it from the heart and listening to the body and seeing how the body reacts through these spiritual experiences. So with all that being said, now I just want to get into the main topic at hand, the spiritual experiences through meditation versus drugs. So I'm going to start with the drug aspect first and then finish it off with the meditation. So during my active use, my drugs of choice were marijuana, alcohol, psychedelics, mainly acid and mushrooms. And when I was not so much of the alcohol and marijuana, but it was more of the acid and mushrooms that really took my mind out of this, what felt like this present reality, and threw me into a whole different world, a different mindset, like what it felt like. And for some people, that sounds like a very fun experience and something that they wish to indulge in. And at the time, it sounded like something that would be fun, but after constantly searching for that high, continuously searching for that experience through many usages over the years, it gets to a point where it starts to harm you mentally. I've read and heard from many different people their experiences on different drugs of this type of magnitude, and I've heard people having like these spiritual experiences through drugs. And when I was in active use, that was something that I wanted. I wanted to have that spiritual experience. And maybe I started with the good intention, but after a while, there's a shift that happens within your mind. At least for me speaking. I don't want to speak for anyone else, but my experience, there was a shift. So eventually it stopped being about the spiritual experience. And like I would always, there'd be times where I would do it with friends, and, we would talk and have these philosophical conversations and intellectually stimulating conversations. And I felt like this is what it was. This was the spirituality behind it. And it was, this was something that I always wanted to experience. Like if I could just experience this like all the time. And for some time I was happy with that. I was happy with experiencing that. And eventually it became more about the solo experience, not wanting to be around anyone and just wanting to have these spiritual experiences on my own. And, what I'm about to get into, it's not really meant to, I don't want to like scare anyone or, promote anything. Because like my honest intention, because I haven't really talked about this openly, is to just like be honest with what happened and understanding that for myself and hopefully to the people that are listening, that this is something that's very dangerous. These drugs can be very harmful, particularly acid and mushrooms. When you start putting that stuff into your body, it can really psych you out. And I remember the first time I ever really experienced something very horrifying when I was under the influence of acid. And take this as you will. I don't know what to really think of the experience, but I've had a lot of bad experiences, horrifying experiences actually, while using these drugs. And one of them I'm going to try to remember vividly. It was one night after I had used, and I was on the come down, and eventually I went to sleep, and the dreams that I had were very, I don't want to say satanic, but it felt like I was in a very harmful place. I was home, and there was a party that was taking place, and it felt like hell because everything was red. There was a lot of laughter, but not like, it was very maniacal and very scary. And being thrusted into this environment it felt real because I was moving around in the dream. I was interacting with everything that was happening. It felt like an out-of-body experience. And, having this like envision and seeing these things, it was a nightmare. It was something that I desperately wanted to get out of. And, you know, feeling that need of being watched, feeling the need of being judged. And there's more to the story, but I don't want to get too deep into it because it's not really the place to share it. And also, it's not like I'm not trying to recall horror stories or recall war stories on this podcast. That's the last intention. But I've had several experiences like this where it was kind of like the opposite outcome of what I wanted. You know, I wanted to experience something that was good, happy, made me feel like I'm alive. And these experiences that were happening, whether it was, you know, real or not, or, you know, whatever was at play, you know, it was pretty much the opposite. It made me want to scream. It made me fearful of what's to come. It made me like realize like, you know, this stuff's very dangerous. And, you know, I after that significant dream, and there were a couple of others after, it didn't really sink in until the week before my sobriety date was when it really, like, it didn't really kick in, but at that time I was mentally scarred. I was damaged in a way that I couldn't really talk about it with anyone because no one would have really understood what I was going through, or what it felt like at the time. And I chose to just keep it in. And, you know, it's scary. It's scary that I see people sometimes, you know, they're like, well, you know, I want to have this type of experience. I want to have a spiritual experience, but I need this substance to help me get there. And I try to be compassionate with people. I try to always view life from their perspective and try to understand where they're at in their life and in that given moment. But that to me, especially after sobriety and, you know, going through rehab and experiencing everything that, you know, it's just like today, right now, in this moment, I have such a hard time understanding why you feel like you need to use a substance to get you to a different mindset. I never understood that. I never, at least from the sobriety, I didn't understand it. And like, I tried to put myself back in the position of when I was using and trying to understand it from that perspective. And it's not that the people that say that is not necessarily, they're not addicts, but I feel like you can still get to that point without needing the substance. And one of my biggest arguments against people that do that is, you know, the Buddha, during the time when he was alive, you know, didn't need to use a substance to get to that point where a lot of people considered him enlightened. And if that's not to your taste, I'll use Jesus. Again, Jesus, in my opinion, was a real person. And Jesus, whether you agree or not, in my opinion, was an enlightened person as well. And Jesus also didn't need that substance. You know, they didn't need a substance to take them to that point. It was through practice. It was through interacting with people, through many hours of vigorous training, meditation, just understanding like life and how it came at them, and understanding to not really let the emotions take over. And I truly believe that experience with which you seek, if that's something that you seek, you will not find that. If you go into a meditation or prayer or whatever practice helps you get to a certain point in awareness, if that's what you seek, you are straying yourself away farther from it. It's not something that you really seek or really look to acquire. It's something that comes naturally. And I remember one time I had an experience. This was when I was living in the sober house that I lived at for a brief period of time. And I remember one day I was meditating and no one was around because my schedule and how it was, I worked overnights, third shift. And this was on a particular day where I was off. And, it was early in the morning and no one was around. Everyone went to work. I pretty much had the whole house to myself at that point. So one morning I was just in the living room and I was meditating, and I remember how at ease I was. I remember feeling how soft my breath was and how smooth the in-breath and the out-breath was. It was so natural. And not to get too sidetracked, but, the breath is, we really, or I sometimes take that for granted. I take for granted how without the breath, there is no life within me. And it's so simple, but to give it attention every now and again, and to just be thankful that, I'm alive and that I'm able to breathe. It's very powerful. So I remember one time, in the living room, and I'm meditating, and usually I have a timer that I set on my phone. And I remember, like, at that point, like, time, like, it didn't matter, and everything was just so blissful and so peaceful. And I remember, within my mind's eye, I saw very vividly like two figures, and there was a light. And I looked to my left, and it's Jesus, and I look to my right, and it's Buddha. And they're both extending their hands to me, and there's this bright light. And as soon as that happened, on my phone, it's ding. I have a timer that's set on my phone, and I was very scared. I had jumped like from my seating position, and I was breathing very heavy. And because it was just like the timing of it and how in sync the moment was. Now, I wasn't trying to think of those two people. It wasn't something that I had set my intention with. It was just something that came to me. And looking back on it, I don't know what it could mean. I have an idea, but I will leave the interpretation to the listener on what they think. But that was something that was very significant and always still is significant to me. This was something that, and like thinking about it and looking back on it, it's like, wow, like this was something that had happened. And at first I thought, like, why would these two even come to me and offer their hand to me? Because I understand who Jesus is. And I've read about the Buddha, and I understand, where these two people were at in their lives, and they're very respected individuals. And to think that they would raise their hands for me and ask me to join them, I didn't think I was really worthy of that. And thinking back to it now and having that thought, like just the thought process of it, because now I'm like really processing it like in real time. It's just understanding like my self-worth, and just understanding that, it's okay, it's okay to feel worthy. It's okay to be accepted. And it takes a lot of work to get to that point. And there's a lot of trial and error with that. A lot of trial and error. And these spiritual experiences that I've had through meditation have always meant more to me than any of the times I ever did drugs and had some type of experience with it. And personally, for me, I don't view those experiences that I've had on drugs as spiritual. It's the ones that I did through meditation. Those are the ones that mean way more to me than any of the times I've ever did it with drugs. And I don't really know if what I'm saying is making any sense, to be very honest. And I just hope that people at least like are open to the idea of just viewing it critically and just having an understanding of, okay, maybe this is something worth looking at. If I was able to even do that, then I think that's a W in my book, to be honest, because I want people to succeed in life. I want people to be happy with what they have and be happy with where they're at in life. I understand how life can be messy at times, and it throws you so many different obstacles and different things. You got to jump through so many different hoops. And right now, currently, I have a lot of struggles with where I'm at right now. But the main point for me is to just remain positive, and just have a positive outlook, and keep practicing, keep trying to inspire people, keep uploading episodes to this podcast, and just trying to be the best version that I can be, and just show up for people. And I think that that's something that I'm very happy and proud of, that I'm able to show up, and not be, under the influence or feel like I need a substance to, be happy. I have people that, rely on me and count on me for different things. And it's a beautiful feeling knowing that I've earned back the trust of people that I've hurt, and making amends to those people. It's truly a blessing. And, with that, hopefully, to whoever is listening, that you got maybe something out of it. Today is, as of this recording, it is May 18th of 2023. So my 2-year sobriety is coming up, and I want to do a special episode and release an episode on that day. So you will be hearing from me soon. And maybe I was thinking, I have some ideas. I'm not gonna reveal it. But thank you to everyone who listened to this episode. Thank you to everybody who is still listening to these episodes. And just a little about the process of making these. I just, the ideas come when they come, and, when they really reach out to me, that's when I try to upload and do an episode when I can. So thank you for your patience with these. I know that these aren't really I tried to have a set schedule with these, but it's a little difficult at times, mainly on my end. Not blaming, I have no one to blame but myself, and I'm not gonna say that there's certain things going on, because in reality, I could be better with it, but the main thing is that I still upload, and that is something that I'm very proud of this podcast. And hopefully in the future, I hope to evolve it in different ways. So with that being said, thank you to everyone who listened. Much appreciated, much love. I hope you have a wonderful day. And until the next episode, peace.